ready? This is a special board meeting of August 19, 2021, and it's now 4:37. We'll begin roll call, please, Mary.
President Lake,
Here.
Vice President Herrera,
Here.
Clerk Chavez,
Here.
Member Cortese,
Here.
Member Doe.
Here.
All right, agenda item 1.02. Welcome to the regular board meeting. Are there any members of public who would like to provide public comment to the board on a closed session agenda item at this time? See none, hear none. And we will recess to the closed session. Thank you, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the regular board meeting of August 19, 2021. Is it a bit echo? I don't know why I put it on mute. Yes, it's unmuted. And board members may request that items be removed from the agenda for consideration and or carried to a future board meeting for consideration and or action, and or that the board take action in a regular meeting on a subject not listed on the published agenda on an emergency basis or other basis allowed by law, Gov Code 54954.2. I don't see any item will be removed. So we don't have any item on the calendar for board special recognition, either with the student governing board. So we move to 8.01. Superintendent and a board member may request that item be considered, discussed, and act on out of the order indicate on the agenda as per schedule. No one want to move any items. So we're going to move to 8.02, presentation and or discussion regarding a 45-day budget update. Mr. Chris Chu, Associate Superintendent of Business Services, and Sylvia Palayo, Director of Finance. Please take it over.
Okay, thank you. We will pull up the presentation. All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Tonight's presentation will be fairly brief. As you recall, last year as well, we presented an update to the board right at the beginning of the school year. It's referred to as the 45-day budget update since the state enacted its budget. Our requirement is to provide updates to the board and our community if there are any significant changes with the budget. But This year's budget update really didn't have a lot of significant changes, but we felt that it was appropriate to bring this update to you at this time. This is information I was going to would share with you tonight. We would also be sharing with you in a couple of weeks when we bring back to you the unaudited actuals for the last school year. So tonight I'll just focus on a couple of the small changes since we adopted our budget in late June, and by the time the state adopted its budget at the end of June. So with that, let me turn the first page. So as I mentioned, here is our budget development calendar. As you recall, we brought to you the budget back on June 24th. With the enacted state budget now, we're bringing to you tonight some of the changes with the budget. And then we'll continue to provide information for you on the budget throughout the rest of the year in the form of the first and the second interim reports, as noted here on the budget calendar. Next slide, please. Here's just the legal ed code requirements as far as what the 45-day budget update is for. I'll leave that for your future information. Next slide. So basically, just a few changes, really. I mean, our staff did such an amazing job in terms of putting together our budget for last year, and we covered most of the known assumptions at that time. However, there were little changes. One of them in the area of the unemployment insurance rate. The unemployment insurance rate is a payroll tax rate, and that payroll tax rate varies as a percentage of total salaries. When the governor proposed his May revision at that time, the proposal for the state unemployment rate was at that time 1.23% of payroll. That would have been a significant increase over what we were paying the prior year. Luckily enough, the state was able to reduce that rate down to a 0.5%, so a half of 1%. So the unemployment rate reduction generated about a $1.3 million savings to our budget this coming year. So sounds like a small percentage, but it means a lot in terms of as a percentage of payroll. Now, with that change, the governor also, or I'd say the legislature also made some adjustments with the projected unemployment rate for the out year. As you recall, our budget is a 3-year budget. And so, you know, what we're talking about right now is the unemployment rate assumptions for the current year, but also at the same time, there was a revision to the unemployment rate assumptions for the 22-23 school year. So I haven't noted up on the slide here is that when we adopted our 3-year budget, the unemployment rate assumption that was built into our budget was a 0.2% or 0.2% of total payroll. The projected unemployment rate now, based on the new year budget, is a 0.5%. So a 0.2% increase now to a 0.5% for the 22-23 school year. And keep in mind, this is again another budget assumption. This is a budget assumption for the following year, so that number could be adjusted. But for our purposes tonight and our 3-year budget, just those two changes nets about a $600,000 change to our total 3-year budget. So that $600,000 change actually increases our ending fund balance, and it reduces that RIF number that as you recall, I shared with the board back in June. The RIF total at that time was about $39,600,000. So just with this one change here, we reduced our RIF number by about $600,000. And I will continue to remind us all that that number will continue to evolve and change, and as we get further into this fiscal year and as we close out next year, that number will change. And then one last thing before I move on to the multi-year. Go back one page. Thank you. One other change was the accounting part of the ESSER $3. As you recall, the district received several pots of federal dollars this last year and this current year. The last installment that we got was the ESSER's $3. When we brought to you the adopted budget at that time, we forecasted receiving and spending those revenues in this current year, the 21-22 school year. But based on our multi-year projections, we are actually going to show that those dollars will be spent and received in 22-23. It's interesting with these ESSER 3 fundings, the monies, although we receive the cash this year, for purposes of accounting, we can't record the revenue until we actually spend those dollars. And so our plan is not to start spending those dollars not until the 22-23 school year. Also, too, I know Teresa's not here tonight, but staff will be bringing forward a plan in terms of how we will be spending the ESSER $3. That is a requirement of those funds as well that we'll be bringing forward to you. But other than that, these were just the two changes to our current year budget. And go on to the next couple slides here. And the next 3 slides are our district's multi-year projection. I think everyone is very familiar with it. Most importantly, as I mentioned, just that $600,000 savings, net savings with the unemployment insurance trickles all the way through the multi-year projection and reduces that reduction number that we were projecting in that third year down from 39.6 now down to 39 million. Any questions about the multi-year? Okay, thank you. Next slide. Oh, next slide. One more. And one more. Okay. There are a couple of other things that were products of the state enacted budget that due to lack of information at this time for us to even put into our budget, these will be some things that we will be adjusting our current year budget. These are the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant, another set of one-time funds. There's also something that's referred to as the ADG Completion Improvement Block Grant. Again, one-time dollars. At this time, none of the consultants, especially school services, has identified or calculated how much a district like us would be receiving. So really, there isn't a lot of information for us to even put a number into our budget. But I'm sharing with the board tonight what the total amount statewide in terms of what the state is allocating for these resources. And I'm sure we'll get our fair proportionate share of it at the time. But as I was just going to say, we just unfortunately just don't have that information at this time to build into our budget. But we will have this information, I suspect, by the time we come back with first interim.
What's
Yes.
the timing for these grants?
These are again one-time funds. If I'm not mistaken, these may also be just one year funds to spend.
But these are obviously the state numbers, but what's the timing for when we would actually?
Oh, when would we get to know our numbers? I anticipate finding out probably in the next month or so.
And when would we get the money?
Oh, well, that is another good question. Depending upon the funding timing, it's hard to say.
It's intended for 21-22 school year, so
Yes.
we'll realize it this year.
Yes. Next slide. And then just to wrap things up, as I mentioned, in the next couple of weeks, we will be bringing back to you the results of last fiscal year. So we will be able to update our projected beginning balance that we shared with you earlier. Also, too, I think all of us are really awaiting to find out more about our current president's American Jobs Plan. We've been hearing a lot of things that could potentially benefit us. Some of the infrastructure things have been some of the areas that my staff has been looking into right now, especially around electrified school buses. So that is one of the interesting areas that I think I'm looking forward to. And then also too, we'll continue to monitor any other changes with the revenue projections, especially the state block grant programs, and we'll bring that information back to you as soon as we have that available. With that, I'll entertain any questions.
Any board member has any question? I have a question from Mr. Chris Chu is on page 6, when you show that for year 1, 21-22 restrict general fund, how much is the district deficit expanding? I did not see any amount there. So what does it mean?
Okay, okay, so page 6 is the restricted part of the general fund. So is your question about the level of deficit spending, is it for the district's total budget or just the restricted portion of the budget?
The district
Total
portion,
budget, or
total
this
budget, total
is, as
budget.
you recall, remember there are three different, two different components of the district's total general fund budget. There's the unrestricted
Uh-huh,
and then there's the restricted.
I see.
This page is the restricted side. So on this page here, what's identified in the red blocks are that year's calculated deficit spend for, in this case, the restricted portion of general fund. But if we were to go to the third page, or the next page, Glenn? The next page is the
7.
combined.
Okay,
So the total district general fund budget, both restricted and unrestricted, the amount of the projected deficit spend is noted on the far right-hand side in the red boxes.
I see.
For the first year, year 1, it's projected to be a negative 27 million.
I see. And the page number 8, you mentioned in here is educator effectiveness block grant one time is 1.5 billion for professional development. So this 1.5 million is divided equally to everyone or just for our?
Well, this is the statewide number, right? This is the statewide number. I'm going to probably guess and say that proportionally, based on the amount of students that we have in comparison, the amount of students in the entire state, is probably how they will divide up this amount of money. But it also depends on other criteria behind the program. Some of this, although this program may not, well, although this program is probably for all K-12 school districts, some districts may benefit more.
When do we know how much do we receive?
Well, I mean, I anticipate the state will release this information pretty soon because, again, every other school district is in the same boat, because if they're being asked to spend these monies before the end of the year, they need to get that information out to everybody so that they can plan.
So this one-time money, is it going to be helpful for our budget if we receive that money, correct? Will be helping our general fund or not? If we receive that.
I would say, I mean, any additional funding we get from the state will help our situation. What's limited is that this type of funding is intended to spend mainly in the areas of professional development. So the district can certainly provide a lot more professional development, or the district can hopefully maybe use some of this funding to help address some of its current plans for professional development and maybe provide some added safety or some extra resources or help relieve the district's budget in those areas of professional development. So I think there's a lot of flexibility, but because we don't have all the particular details yet, I don't want to venture too far.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. Any other question from the board? If not, and thank you for your update for the 5 days report. Then we move to item 10. Oh, yes. All right. Go ahead, Jack Hammer. All right. Sure. Okay. Thank you. I didn't see it now. Thank you. Oh, and Julio. Sure.
Hey, good evening. My name is Jack Hamner. I'm the president of Eastside Teachers Association. First of all, I want to welcome everybody back. This is my first time here. I don't know if you've been here, but it's definitely great to see faces, even though there's limited number, but it's just, the atmosphere is cool. Chris, thank you for that, for your presentation. One of the things that I hope that you all noticed tonight is the amount of grant money, one-time money, federal money, state money that is all coming in. So I hope that as this happens, we all grab our pillowcases and hold it out and let it all fall in, because we need all that money. But there is something that I would like people to consider. We, as ESTA, is a teachers association, but we have always been supportive of CSEA staff, administrators, management, and you name it. So one of the things that I've advocated many times before is salary increases for people like administrators when we negotiate and we get a certain salary increase, and at certain times they hadn't gotten that. So for the first time ever, it was brought to my attention that our management staff has not been getting salary increases all this time that other people have. I don't know how many years it's been, but it's been at least probably 5 or 6 or maybe more, but somebody could look that up and they could let you know. But I do know this. This is my 4th year that I have been doing this. If I can remember correctly, the amount of raises going to retro the year before I came into this position is probably about 15 or 15.5% total over that time. And I want you all to think about any employee who works just as hard as anybody else, watching everybody else's salaries increase while their salaries are not. Okay, and I'm sure that there are some cases where people, when they move up the ladder, if you want to call it that, whose pay isn't moving up the ladder, it's probably going lower and people are taking a pay cut. There isn't a lot of those people, from what I understand. It's about a half a dozen. I'm estimating that. So I would hope somehow, I don't expect the 15% to be made up like that, but I hope you look at all of this, those funds that are coming in, and really think about, when you get a promotion, wherever you work, what would you expect in a salary? Would you expect a pay cut? Probably not. And so I think that we can find it. I know we can find it in that budget to be able to take care of them, because they deserve it just like everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, ESTA President Jack Hammer, for your comments. We acknowledge that.
Madam
Comments.
President, we do have a member, an attendee, who has a raised hand. I want to just check into with Mr. Ashby to see if he wants to speak on this item. Winston, are you looking to speak on this item?
I am speaking under community comments or public comments,
Okay,
10.1.
We'll get you at 10.0 then.
Yeah, I think on item number 10, but now we have Julio Pardo, who's CSEA president. Please step up. Oh, no, this will be 8.02 for 45-day budget. No, okay, so want to wait for the 10.01. Member of public may address the board on any subject not on tonight's agenda. However, provision of the Broward Government Code Section 54954.2a and 54954.3 preclude any action as an unagendized item. No response is required from the board or district staff, and no action can be taken. However, the board may instruct the superintendent to agendize the item for a future meeting. Any person may address the board on any item on the meeting agenda. Persons wishing to address the board must fill out a speaker request from via online submission. Your comment will be read out loud as part of the public meeting. Comment should be limited to no more than 1,000 characters in length. You may also raise your virtual hand in Zoom to request to speak. You will have 2 minutes to speak. So I'll probably open the discussion, and we will invite Julio Pardo first from CSEA President.
Ma'am, how would you like me to set the timer?
We have 5 minutes. Yes.
Julio Pardo, President, Chapter 187, CSCA. So first of all, let me say happy school year. It's been a long time since we could all get back together again. And at my site, I did work in the summer. I did see a few students come in, but it was really nice at the beginning of the year to see so many students come in, and the fact that they actually did a better job of staying safe than I did, because I did walk into a couple of classrooms at times like this, and they told me to make sure I put my mask back on. So anyway, I just want to bring up the fact that I do commend the district for everything you've done regarding trying to make sure that everyone's safe, and doing everything possible to keep everyone healthy. But there have been some concerns. We do know that this new variant is much more contagious. People have been catching it in all different types of ways. And I would hope that this district, rather than just relying on CDC guidelines, which usually take 2 weeks before they make a new decision, after so many people have been infected, that maybe you think a little bit ahead of time, be a little bit more proactive, reconsider the procedures you use to inform people of possible exposure. Because although I know it is all confidential, we have a lot of people that, let's face it, if you're in an office with 7 people and you notice that 3 people are gone, usually one of those people calls you and says, hey, I tested positive. And yet you get no call from the district that you're in contact with that person. And I know that the guidelines are that it's supposed to be 6 feet, 15 minutes, but sometimes people forget that they're in that room maybe for half an hour, and maybe they're not 6 feet away from that person, but they are in that room for half an hour. And again, we don't know exactly how strong this new variant is. So I'm hoping that the district will reconsider, be a little bit more proactive in how we think about this. Yes, we may all have vaccinations, but the fact is you can still catch it, and people don't want to end up possibly catching and taking it home to their families. So please reconsider some of the guidelines we have. Maybe make communication a little quicker with people so that they're not so worried about what is going on. Other than that, I can't really say anything too bad about what's going on right now. I just hope that things continue. I really don't want to shut down. I'm hoping that people finally get wise, go and get vaccinated, and everyone start wearing masks. Thank you.
Thank you, Julio Pardo. Do you have any other one that raised hand, Mr. Bandesi?
Yes, we do have a member of the public, Winston Ashby, who would like to address the board.
Okay, please go ahead.
Mr. Ashby, it appears you're still unmuted. There you go. You have 2 minutes.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so my name is Winston Ashby. I'm the executive director of the Positive Alternative Recreation Team Building Impact Program, the party program. I am communicating on the email that I sent to you, Van Lee, as well as Ms. Cortese. As a member of the community who also has a history of providing services that benefit students in the Eastside Union High School District, I value formal written agreements, MOUs, in order to communicate to our funders and to the Eastside Union High School District of the impact, reach, resources provided, offered, and engaged by your students in the Eastside Union High School District. We were not allowed that. We were not provided the MOU. And according to the communication on the Eastside Union High School District website, your priorities include to decrease the student achievement gap, form partnerships with new and existing organizations to improve opportunities for students to develop career path and college opportunities, and provide a safe and secure learning environment for schools, teachers, and staff. So I am requesting and pretty much demanding a meeting with board representatives, because I did speak with Mr. Vanderzee, I did speak with your staff, and yet our organization, who already have a history of providing services in the Eastside Union High School District, was not allowed access to a MOU application. Thank you. I expect to hear something within the next 5 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ashby. Yeah, we cannot comment right now, then our superintendent will take note. Any other comments from the public?
There's
Madam
no other
President, I
public
think we
comment.
can also say regarding the comment by Mr. Ashby, that the board president and or vice president will confer with the administration regarding his comment.
Right, yes. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, no more public comments on 10.01. Then we move to 11.01, presentation, information, discussion, and action regarding update on novel coronavirus, COVID-19, and school reopening. Mr. Glenn Vanderzee, Superintendent.
Thank you very much. We decided not to call it a reopening, but a beginning. And let's talk about how we began 21-22 in a very unique way. And I want to I can't say enough to all the members of our organization and our families and our students that led to, as Mr. Pardo spoke to, just an amazing opening. On our first day back, everything that we needed to be safe was in place. People were clear on the protocols and were abiding by them. Our students and our adults were engaging, and there was an energy that we hadn't felt for 17 months. And it felt really good to be an Eastside. As we talked about our 4 aspects of returning in person, ensuring safety and a focus on wellness and mental health, establishing that learning environment and addressing learning loss, I really loved what I saw in the first 45 minutes of just the first 3 schools I visited that were doing just that. We've got this, how's this for welcoming you as you are? We had students over at Evergreen, and they were being invited in and immediately moved into groups as freshmen and sophomores and getting oriented to the campus. This is who you are. You haven't been on a high school campus before. Here on the right, we can see our students who may have never seen that beautiful new Cathedral of Learning over at Overfelt, that we're getting oriented not just to the campus layout, but the services that they could be accessing, whether it was mental health or counseling services, where they are on this campus, where to find them, prioritizing that on day one. It was a beautiful thing to see. And I have to tell you, and I can't give enough credit to our students and their families. This was a class that decided, hey, our comfort level right now is better outside, so let's meet outside. But interestingly enough, and I think the adults at our sites will note this, our students quite aware of data, quite aware of that, things that make a difference, vaccination and wearing a mask, as Mr. Pardo said, to keep themselves safe and those at home safe, are not taking off their masks when they go outside. We have not had to even ask for it. We know that we ask, please keep mask on indoors at all times, unless you're with. And our students in this photo, you'll see, have decided to keep their masks on, and the adults similarly. And I think it's amazing to see a community that's ready to be back together, prepared to be back together, actually doing more to keep each other safe than what's being asked of them. And I think that's typical of Eastside. It shouldn't surprise it, but I do want to highlight that fact. So what are we looking at tonight? Tonight, we just talked about those 4 aspects of reopening. I do want to share some new data and some new guidelines, because they have changed since the last time we spoke to each other on August, was it 5th, right? And before we opened school. So, and then we'll just talk about next steps. And there are a lot of next steps, because we're dealing with different comfort levels, different protocols. new rules for exposure notices that we just heard about, and we're gonna talk about that. So let's jump in. First of all, I'm always going to show you the data on new cases, and this is in the Santa Clara County. And we can see that our new 7-day rolling average for new cases is about 315. Well, the last time I presented to you, I believe the number was 320. It's now at 315. It was a few weeks prior, it was 400. So let's keep masking, let's keep vaccinating, and let's get that number down. The other data point that we do look at is that of vaccination. And we have broken over the 80% percentage, which is fantastic, which makes our community very different than other communities in the state and around the country. And we're glad to see that number go over 80.5, but you're going to see later in next steps that our nurses are collaborating directly with the county to bring more vaccinations onto our sites and just keep rotating that so that we can increase the number of our students that are vaccinated and their community. We're aware of this last order. The last time we talked about it was August 5th. This was the issuance from the county requiring us all to mask indoors. And like I said before, our community has done that and more. We're wearing it outdoors. And we bought a lot of masks, and right now we're seeing that people are showing up with their own. People who get this, they take it seriously. We still have the PPE in place. We're making the adjustments if exemptions are necessary. But overall, people are just demonstrating a real collective effort to keep each other safe. And I even say this, I've spoken to a few people whose political views probably do not include personally the belief that a mask does do that. But I would like to thank those people for understanding that they're part of a community and have chosen to mask, even though politically they might think it's not necessary, for the good of their community and for those that are seeing the science behind it. I want to thank them for doing that. On August 11th, we had a new public health order, and this new public health order, and I want to thank CSEA and ESTA actually for being ahead of this. We already had memorandum of understanding with both groups, basically saying this: it's important for our group safety to be vaccinated. We'd like to know if you're vaccinated, and if you're not, we're going to ask you to weekly test. And both of our bargaining units were way ahead of that curve and looking out for their membership and our employees in our community and our students' families. So thank you for that. The state got hit on August 11th and essentially put in those rules that essentially we will need to verify vaccination. And it's a little stricter rules, which I'll talk about in just a second. And if you're not vaccinated, then you need to do weekly testing. And that's the new order. And we will be putting that in place. Now, what is different is that from the previous county order, the county basically said there's a form, fill out the form and say, I've been vaccinated or I haven't, or I refuse to state. And we accepted that as an authentication. You're no longer just able to just self-report vaccinated. So right now our teams are working on creating an online, the ability for our employees online to be able to upload a photo, take a photo. If you've got that Health Star QRR, because you've registered, to be able to verify your vaccination card. So that now is a new standard for us declaring someone vaccinated. And so all the work that we did to get that authentication, we're starting over with this new form, but that's all right. Let's get the real data. We have an obligation to report that to the county if need be. It will help us in dealing as we go through the protocols about whether someone needs to be quarantined or not because of vaccination status. So this is all very much helpful and contributing to the public good. But as a community, we are each going to probably have to take that 30 seconds to upload our information to prove our vaccination. That's one change that has occurred truly in the last little bit. So let's talk about some beginning numbers because we see some good things. And one of the questions that we had when we walked away from each other or walked away in March 13 is we had an awareness that many families were relocating to other parts of the state. It became economically difficult as a service industry was curtailed and some places were shut down in terms of restaurants and other places. that we had relocation, and there was some concern about our enrollment number. But we're happy to see that as of day 8, where our enrollment is at currently 22,073, which is 100.7% above our projected number. Now, we know that there's some students that still we're looking in to see that they're not on our campuses, and we are obligated to find out why, welcome them back. You know, we don't just walk away from a student. So this number might drop a little bit. We might see some new enrollees, but we're happy to see that we're almost a percentage point above our projection, which in a system our size, 1% makes a big difference in terms of the number. So we're happy to see that our students are in our area, continue to be our students, and are back in our schools. What's also really encouraging is that since the school year began, we only had 6 positive tests out of the 2,121, which is like half of, you know, it's less than half of 0.5%. It's truly, yes.
How many positive tests did we have last year?
I'd have to run the numbers. So when we talk about positive tests since last year, what we look at, one is we look at someone who tests positive, and then we do the contact tracing to find out where that transmission most likely is. And so while we did have positive tests, the county and operating with us could only identify 1 case where the transmission was school-based. We talked about in summer school, there were 0 cases. We can get you that number, what that N is for positive cases for last year. What we're seeing 6. In full transparency, I want to say we had one site where in the last week, and this site was, you know, dealing with this information where there was a high level of positive tests that came out of one small site. And, you know, we have to maintain confidentiality and reporting, but behind the scenes, our HR department worked really closely with the county, and the county, and I want to thank the county for working with us. Looking at the timeline, looking at 5 people were asymptomatic, no symptoms, really deemed that those were essentially false positives. That either the tests, there was something with the tests, something happened in the lab, or it's just, it could also be a case where someone forgets that they had a glass of tea or, you know, a cup of tea or ate within a certain timeline before you're supposed to take the test. We're not going to speculate as to what it is, but according to the county, when we first reported a higher number of positives, they came back after tracing and doing interviews with our staff and calling in to see that they're asymptomatic. I know HR was calling frequently these same people. They've reduced that at one site to just 1 positive, which is great. And it speaks to the power of doing the contact tracing. But I also understand that from an employee's perspective, not seeing that person next to them can be, well, you know, how do I get informed? And I just want to reiterate that we follow the rules of the contact tracing, that when we interview the person that's affected, the county interviews, they find the people closest to them. And HR is also looking now to just talk about maybe just an exposure notice to something that says there has been a positive in this area. That can be disconcerting as well, but finding a way to just let people know, be mindful of your symptoms and things like that. I'd like to thank that site. I think they know who they are, for continuing to communicate with us. And I know there was some early anxiety and probably some, you know, why aren't you telling us more? Completely understand that perspective, but we also have to maintain our confidentiality of our employees, as well as the reporting and contact tracing that goes on with the county. That has to be very strict in order for them to make their declarations. And I know that can be hard on us in the short term, and I want to thank the site for dealing with that appropriately. But I'm really, it's really encouraging to see these levels, low levels of positivity rates. Now we start with the new order, the authentication that had occurred previously around vaccination is kind of on pause as we move to this new area. But I would just like to show that before the authenticated verification was about 80% before the new state guidelines. And so I just want to let the organization know that, that we had different levels of presenting the vaccination. I just want to let everybody know in our system, it will be an ask. Please get ready, get that vaccination. get that card, and we'll try to make it as easy as possible for folk to get their information up. If you say, no, I want to do the weekly testing, I'm not going to put in a vaccination. No, even we're asking that you put in the vaccination. If you still want to test voluntarily weekly, completely okay. We get that. And so we are asking all our employees and friends in the room. I know you'll be helpful getting the word out to bargaining unit members about getting that vaccination information turned on and still be able to test if they so desire. We've had some new guidelines. We had an amazing reopening. There's energy in the room. I pass by people all the time and they go, we're back. And it's like, they're surprised. And I go, yeah, we're back. And they're like, no, but we're not just back. We're like back. We're like doing stuff. We're teaching, we're learning. There's like stuff happening. Somebody said to me the other day, almost like cried a tear of joy. I was just in an IEP. Like, let's celebrate that. Fantastic. You know, it was like the first one back. So really good things. For next steps, let's be real clear that we reopened well and the work's not done and guidelines change. So we'll keep on it. We're going to establish our vaccination and testing program to meet the state guidelines before October 15. We're really going to be asking for people. We want to be ready to ask people to start submitting on October 1st. We're going to before that, but they have submitted by October 1st. So we'll be looking to get that started during December. We are going to develop and publish a dashboard that doesn't just include positivity rates, but also vaccination rates so that our parents, students, and community can, when you look at a positivity rate of 0.003%, it frees one to say, let's go to school, right? So we're gonna publicize that information. And if things change, I think we'll just be transparent with the information that's out there. As I mentioned earlier, our district nurses are collaborating with the county to schedule on-site vaccination station across the district. I believe next week they'll be meeting with Oak Grove, Silver Creek, and Mount Pleasant, and we'll just keep adding sites as they are capable. We'll make the rounds through our areas, and where we know in certain neighborhoods in our community, if they need 2 or 3 visits, then we're going to do 2, 3, or 4 visits and keep pushing the issue as long as our partners in serving other districts as well can work and provide that service.
What about boosters?
Well, right, we'll have to get to the boosters, and you know, that's as we get to that, as the county becomes ready to provide that service, we will engage with them. Like,
Okay, so they're not offering that with us yet.
right now, we're looking to get that first and second shot for our students that we still know in a 12 to 17 age group, that we know that age group is still below those that are 18 or older. And so we want to really zero in on getting that first vaccination for our high school age students.
By October 15th, you said? By October 15th, like start that process, or by when? Will the nurses?
So we're not asking, nor are the guidelines asking for authentication of vaccination for students.
Oh, by.
So these student vaccinations, so there's no need for us to wait. We're looking to begin these as soon as possible. So as soon as the school and the county can coordinate,
Yeah.
and then we can get the information out to parents for all the necessary authorizations. We want these stations for student or community vaccination on our sites as soon as possible. The other thing is what we're seeing is adult education. We've always talked about reopening in terms of K-12, but we are seeing that with our adult education program, that we're seeing lower attendance than last year. And let's just think about this. We know K-12 is compulsory. Thou shalt go to school, or there's a knock on the door. We think about some of our adult learners who are working 8 to 10 hours a day in a mask done, and then pontificate or thinking out, am I now going to go for another 3-hour class? And right now are maybe saying, it's too uncomfortable, I can't do it. So adult ed and ed services will be working next week to see if there's a way for us to modify the program or the delivery of that program to increase student attendance. And then we'll work with that bargaining unit to create the MOU that's necessary to make that work possible. And I just want to make sure that we as an educating community get the difference between the K-12 guidelines and whatever guidelines might limit or not allow us to meet in our equitable communities, meet our adult learners where they are, find out where they might have a need for us to adjust so that we can positively respond, perhaps with a different model.
I mean, we have the flexibility to offer both programs to our adults, even ongoingly, right? I mean, depending on
Well, that's what
Meet them where they are, right?
we're going to make sure that we are deliberate on what we think the issue is, craft a program to relate to that issue, then we'll definitely run it by our business.
In progress.
If to see if there's any, if in that model, is there any like implications for funding or anything like that? And if not, then we'll move forward with adjusting an MOU to make it happen. Fair enough? All right, the other thing is, and I want to thank HR again, and specifically our person that's really been taking care of us with COVID and has been working with agencies and is working with, he's worked with the group that's going to allow us to be able to have some very immediate testing available at our site. So if someone comes into the office and feels a certain way, they could be able to test and get a result within a 45-minute period to see if they're testing positive for COVID, but also a cost-free option that would be available to all our students as an option. And so we're getting ready to work with that organization, set it up, and then in a newsletter that we'll send out to all our families, just let them know that that's an option for their students, encouraging the vaccination and encouraging regular testing.
What's the timeline for that?
So for the two separate programs, the instant testing, we've had one staff member being trained, and he tried out the test today, and so we're looking at training other staff members so that we can provide service for all the sites with this instant testing.
Okay.
So we got our first sample of 600 test kits
wow.
for this instant testing, and we're starting to slowly roll it out and train staff members.
So that's already being rolled out then?
It hasn't. We received it, and we want to make sure that we know what we're doing with it first prior to rolling it out to the sites.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, we want to make sure that we develop the protocols and identify and work with our bargaining units about the appropriate personnel to provide that service before just setting it out because we've got the boxes. And similarly, when we get the larger program for testing for students at no cost, we'll send out the protocols and the ways to do opportunities to do that. And I would guess that that's going to be in place in a number of weeks.
Okay.
But in the meantime, we still all our staff and all our students can utilize our existing testing provider. So if someone wants to test, they can test. It's just that with students, we will be moving to a different provider because we're going to really encourage those numbers to grow. And there's a program that allows us to do that at no cost.
That's awesome. That's awesome that we're already rolling it out too, because it's just like that quick ease of mind, right? 45 minutes, versus having to wait a few days. Makes a difference.
Yeah, and there's limitations to that test, like the number we can actually do in a day. So that's why those protocols are going to be important. About when do we utilize this as opposed to, I just want to use it. All right. Along the way, as always, we're just going to continue to monitor the local data around us. We'll look at our site data. We'll continue to follow just the guidelines and the safety protocols. And once again, I want to thank our community going above and beyond what's been asked of them. And then also we'll continue with some wellness efforts. And later tonight, Dr. Powell is going to be sharing the wellness efforts that have got kicked off this year. Perfect timing with a new beginning in our sites. And we're excited about that. So thank you very much.
I have a quick question. Doesn't have to do on anything like a COVID necessarily, but you said we're at 22,000. Do we know where most of those students are at, or would it be possible to get that data? 'Cause I just found out from one of our feeder districts, there are 1,000 students less this year starting off, and that's huge. And it's one of our smaller districts. So I'm like, how is it that we're going above? I mean, I'm not complaining. I like it. Yes, I'm just curious.
Everything I'm going to say is purely speculative.
Okay.
There's been no hard data to answering this. We could find that many of our families are anticipating a return to school, that if families did find a way to come back in. We might have found that in the age of distance learning, that some parents opted for private or charter schools where they felt an in-person or a different program would be offered and possibly are now returning back to our district. There's just a host of different reasons why they could come back. like I said, our projection was, we're at 100.7% on projection. I don't expect it to land there. I expect it to come back, but just in terms of planning and looking forward and seeing that those students are in our desk, I think it's highly encouraging to know that we're still here as a community and our schools still see us as viable options. And I think the feeding programs that we offered during this, since March 13 of 2020, and the way that our sites have continually demonstrated a genuine interest and concern and presence within our communities during COVID, I think makes a difference.
I think if I can add to that as well, is that all of our students are over 12, and so they all qualify for the vaccine. And so there might be a little more assurance from the parents as far as peace of mind of sending their students back to school, knowing that all our students are potentially vaccinated.
Mr. Van der Zee, I thank you for the report for the certificate classify and admin vaccination report. And I was wondering that for the enrollment that we have in our school, do we have any student that sign up for independent study? Because looking to the report, really amazing. We got very good result, back from the enrollment. So I'm kind of wondering that, do we have any?
Yes, we did receive a number of requests, and some people requested it, learned about the program and said, really, that's not distance learning. That's not my option for the child. At one point, I know that we were up to about 183 requests. And for those that have been met with, we're putting those students into the program according to the timelines, but those meetings and developing those schedule is still occurring. So we don't have final numbers for you yet.
Awesome.
But truly, it is not, I think our community has recognized the difference between being in person, development appropriate, following the safety standards, and being in person instruction, and the other option of independent studies.
Yeah, I think it's just amazing. I want to appreciate our certificate classify and management have been worked very hard during the reopening school. I was wondering that if we have one case, if like a student or any employee that involved in a COVID, so are we going to shut down the school, or how do we prepare this, and how do we handle that?
So in the old protocols, our vocabulary is changing on this. We used to talk about small cohorts, right? We don't talk about small cohorts anymore, right? We used to have, when we'd go through the flow chart of whether someone should go home or stay in, there was never a consideration of vaccinated, status of being vaccinated or not. That's now totally put you on a different path. And so the old rules did stipulate when you hit a certain number, then you shut down a group. Right now, the new rules are more like we respond by contact tracing. And if that require, if by contact tracing, we find enough students are out of the classroom and it merits in the short term, just from an instructional point of view, doing something differently, we would do that. But right now, it really is being handled more through contact tracing and dealt with individually on an individualized basis, and then just quarantining appropriately. That's the current guidelines. We'll wait for new guidelines, but that's what we're doing. And that's why I appreciate everybody's patience and kind of understanding that there's a process and confidentiality, because we do act quickly and the county acts quickly. But if it's one case, fine. If it's 2 or 3 in one morning, it could take a little longer, but we're pretty good at getting everything done very quickly. And our sites are being highly effective in just recognizing who's coming to the office and asking the right questions and getting the protocols in place. And our students have been pretty good at being able to identify them vaccinated or not, and where they go then on the flow chart.
So if any visitor or parents want to come to visit the school, are we going to check their vaccination passport, or how does it work?
We're asking parents and community members, for the most part, please try to do as much as you can via phone, remotely, or by email, because we are trying to limit the number of visitors on our campuses precisely for that reason. There's not a rule in place like you can come in if you're vaccinated or not. So we put our PPE in there. We have clear points of entry because we just want to minimize the amount of interaction and contact between our communities within our schools and those from the outside. Not that they're not welcomed here, but we are going to have to find a different way to communicate just for this, the health and safety of our communities this year.
Absolutely. I also want to see, maybe next time, would you do a report? I like to see our student has been received a free meals. How would they adopt it? And, you know, how many percentage that the student that really take advantage on the free meals that for everyone? I
Yeah,
like
we'll
to
get
see
to that. Our CNS job is doing a great job of responding to new forms of demand. And I gotta tell you, in that first week, saying we up our game on our vegetarian meals. We had them, but once we knew the numbers, we were able to start altering our menu and things like that to respond to just input that we got in the first 3 or 4 days of school as we were really looking to address the initial numbers. We're now, like we said, ready to adjust what we serve and how we serve it to meet our needs.
Awesome. All right, any other board member has any question? No, then thank you, Mr. Van der Zee, for the report. Let's move on to 12.01. Presentation and discussion regarding mental health and wellness. Mr. Sean Power, Director of Student Services, and Teresa Marcus, Associate Superintendent of Educational Services. Please take it over. Yes. Yes. I know, when I speak, I still have to take it out.
I know, I'm like, you start
Very
talking
hard.
like you can't breathe in there, so
know.
appreciate it. Good afternoon, board members. It's good to see y'all. It's been a while, so I'm glad to see you guys. I'm also glad to be back in person. Y'all know I've been here for a year and I'm just now seeing students at school sites, which has been absolutely amazing. Tonight, I'm here to just share a little bit with you about the work that our mental health and wellness teams have been doing, work that really started last year in preparation for our young people to return to us. We'll wait for our slow load here. But as always, I know my first slides because all of our first slides are grounded in our efforts to build equitable communities where all students are welcomed as they are. Where their strengths and areas of growth are known and supported. And as we are returning to school, we know that those are critical components, that all students are welcomed as they are, that we take the time to reassess their strengths and those areas of growth as they make that return. Many of our young people, the last time they were on a school site in 9th grade was 7th. Wow, right? Like when you really think about it, there's been 7th to 9th grade, and now's the first time you're on your school site. So what does that mean for our young people in terms of their social development, their emotional development, right? And then how do we identify that, right? We've had great relationships with our feeder districts in the past where as students are coming in, we know who they are a little bit because we're able to communicate with them. But what happens when they only know them via Zoom? Right? As a high school district, that's really important to understand as we think about identifying strengths and areas of growth and some of the challenges that we face as a high school district. And then making sure that our adults positively respond to the social emotional wellness and academic needs of every student so that they can engage with tasks for full participation. And so as we knew coming back into school that we were gonna have to do some assessment, we were going to have to be intentional about what it means to welcome people. We were going to have to be intentional about figuring out not only the areas of growth, but what are the strengths, right? And so our approach has really been looking at that systems response, right? And so when we talk about the systems response, our team did a lot last year looking at like, what are the policies that we have in place? So that we can ensure access. So what are the barriers that some of our young people are experiencing when it comes to accessing mental health and wellness services on their school sites? And working with our SGB, having a town hall. We actually got together with SGB, did a town hall, had the social workers and the students actually engaging in dialogue last year so that we could use their voice to inform some of the practices that we'll be talking about tonight. And practice being kind of that last component of the systems response. And so as we think about responding as a system, we hear about this language of MTSS, which is really about aligning the systems that we have, right? And so when we think about that, it's important to think about what we do at what we call that tier 1 level. So when it comes to mental health and wellness, what do we have to offer all students, right? At the tier 2 level, how do we identify those students who may need a little bit more for whatever reason that may be? And how do we get them engaged in group structures and group supports that support mental health and wellness? And then tier 3 are those kids that we got to love just a little bit more, who need some of those individualized supports and services as it relates to mental health and wellness. Skip the slide. And so what we've really been doing is preparing to meet the needs of our students and meeting them where they are with that MTSS model. And part of that has been having an opportunity to expand our team, right? So prior to the pandemic, we had 17 social workers. Of those 17 social workers, 4 of them were assigned to our therapeutic program. I call it therapeutic programs. What you might know it as our ED program, our emotional disability program, but I like therapeutic. I think it sounds better and more strength driven. And so 4 of our social workers were assigned just to support that program. So really what that means is that I'm not a mathematician, but 17 minus 4 is, there you go. So we had 13 social workers supporting our 22,000 plus students. And so when you think about that and we think about MTSS, we don't have the capacity to provide every student one-to-one services. However, being able to expand our team this summer, we added 11 social workers to our team. I made that up, but the total number is 28. Don't quote my math though. So we now have 28 social workers on our team that we were able to bring in this summer, which I think is really important because it has allowed us to expand our capacity. But not only were we able to bring in 28 social workers, when we think about equitable communities, it was really important to us to ensure that we had social workers that looked like, sound like the community. And so we had an opportunity to expand our team. We went from having 3 social workers on our team that spoke a language other than English to 11 social workers on our team that speak a language other than English. So when we talk about access, wow, right? Just that alone, right, is really important to speak about. We were intentional in listening to the stories of our social workers in terms of that, because what we wanted to do was have cultural representation along racial lines, but also gender identities and gender expressions, so that students see themselves in the social workers that are serving them, which is so important when we're asking them to share their most vulnerable stories with us. And so that was the first thing that we did. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, man, in Eastside, if y'all didn't know, we have one of the best social work internship programs, I would say, in the state. And so we partner with every university in the area, from San Jose all the way to San Francisco. And today I was meeting with our 28 interns, from bachelor's level interns to postmaster's level interns, which gives us the ability to expand our supports even more. And as part of that work, we've done a rebranding. Y'all like the new logo? Yes. So one of the things that was important is we know that visuals and branding and marketing are important, especially for our young people. And so as part of the conversations we were having with SGB, one of the questions we asked was, what is mental health and wellness to you? And we were challenging ourselves to move past just counseling and just talk therapy, which fit in that mental domain, right? And so how do we serve kids that feel like mental health and wellness is important to them, but maybe culturally or for other reasons, they don't want to sit down and be therapized by anybody? And so what we did was we talked about what are domains of wellness outside of mental health, right? And so we decided as a team that we would focus on 6 of the 8 domains. And our logo really leverages and identifies and makes it clear what are the domains of wellness that we are able to support our young people with, so that they are not just surviving, but they're thriving, right? And that's really what we want to think about when we think about Eastside mental health and wellness, is that our young people aren't just surviving, but they're truly thriving.
Well, and can I just say too that I love the that whole child perspective and the emphasis on wellness, so that it's not, I think so many people have like a preconceived notion about what is mental health and that some people don't want to avail themselves of those resources. But when you talk about wellness, I think who doesn't want wellness?
Yeah,
Right?
and we'll get a chance to share a little bit with you about in expanding the wellness, some of the practices that we are able to shift and add by bringing that in just a second. Next slide, Glenn. And so first one is that as a team, we knew that coming back, we had to build community awareness. One, because stigma is real, which I think it speaks to what Board Member Cortese was saying, is that stigma is very real around mental health and wellness. And so a lot of times we have students who feel like they want to be well, but don't feel like mental health is the connection because it brings up these feelings of something is wrong with me, right? And so we as a team did a lot in the first couple of weeks to build community on our campus. And so what you're looking at is you're actually looking at photos of our social work teams at different sites, just out providing what we call psychoeducation. So just talking about what is mental health and wellness. And as a part of that, you're looking at on the left there, you see Silver Creek and some of the young people at Silver Creek connecting with their social worker there. We also leveraged our social media platforms for our wellness centers. And so in the middle there, you're looking at Andrew Hill High School. And then on that far right side, you're looking at James Lick High School and their school social worker who's out with some of the guys talking about mental health and wellness. And so as we talk about those tier 1 services, some of the things that our teams are doing at the school, at the tier 1 service level, is they have been providing school-wide presentations to the different grade levels about what mental health and wellness is as a part of rebuilding the community and reestablishing schools as a safe place. And also staff presentations. A lot of our team during those first couple days in August were able to provide professional development to our staff around what's coming up for them. What are the emotions that are coming up for them? How have they been impacted by the pandemic? How has it impacted their mental health and wellness as well? And the one that I really want to talk about tonight in terms of the tier 1 is the work that we've been able to do to establish calming spaces on each and every one of our school sites.
Can I just add an amen to this? That's so awesome. Really, this has been like a dream that I've had, that we could provide this for our students, and that you made this real. It's incredible.
Thank you. So when we talk about calming spaces, one of the things that we knew coming back from being out of school for so long is that we needed to create a place on our campuses for students who are experiencing perhaps externalized behaviors and some internalized behaviors, to provide them opportunities to calm and de-escalate themselves. So that they could be better prepared to interact with others in the learning environment. And so part of that is teaching kids self-regulation skills and providing them with sensory opportunities in what we call these common spaces, where students can go during unstructured time if needed, lunch, before school, after school, or if during class, if they need that 15 minutes to just de-escalate, they can come to that calming space and go back to class. And so in the calming space, go ahead, Glenn, next slide. We have a number of different stations, and those stations are built around sensory. And there's a lot of science that really speaks to being able to use different sensory mechanisms to help support ourselves in self-regulation and coping. And I'll show you some of those in just a minute. But what we did was we built auditory, oral, visual, tactile stations, cognitive stations within these spaces, so kids can go in, choose what they would like to do to calm for that period of time, check in, where were you at when you came in today? I was, what the kids say, I was hella angry, and then check out and say, I'm feeling less stressed right now. And so I wanted to show some examples of what that actually looks like in person. And so what you're seeing is a couple of our different calming spaces, or parts of our calming spaces at some of our schools. On that left side, you're seeing Silver Creek. The kids come in that little box over there. There's a number of different items, from stress balls to puzzles to journaling activities that the kids can come in, pick their thing, sit down and do that for 15 minutes to de-escalate, and then head back to class. At the top there, you actually, in the top middle there, you see some guys from James Lick, and they're just relaxing. They've got a number of chairs and couches for the kids to just relax for a couple of minutes and engage in dialogue. At the bottom there, you're actually looking at Oak Grove's movement station, so kids can come in. We have massage kind of materials for the kids to be able to foam roll, or we have yoga mats for them to be able to do yoga. We even have speed bags for our kids who may experience somewhat externalizing or internalizing behaviors, but their tendency is to need more of that physical release. So we have like punching bags, speed bags in there for the kids as well. And then that last picture that you see on the right is actually the art station at Independence High School, where you see the low mood lighting and then the ability for the kids to pick off that wall just in art form that they would like to use, sit at that table for 15 minutes. We know that there's a lot to coloring and de-escalation and self-regulation. And you can actually see some of the artwork that the kids have done there over the last couple of years on the wall during those de-escalation periods. Then we talk about the tier 2 level. At the tier 2 level, that's the level where we really look at providing different types of groups. And we're so appreciative about the partnerships that we have with our community-based agencies, from Ujima to Uplift, to you name it. We have over, I would say probably over 40 partnerships with different community-based agencies. Last year, we met with each and every school site to ask them about the community-based services on their site, what was working, what was not working. Because one of the things that we know is it's not that we just want to have all the services, we want to have effective services for each and every one of our students. And so some of the groups that we have, we'll show you a couple of our photos here. Shout out to the kids who gave me permission to share. You can see a couple of our therapeutic groups at Oak Grove there at the top. And our good friends at Foothill High School, they work with a community-based organization called Los Compadres Network, who provides two Jova Nobles circles and curriculum for our males. And they also provide a secondary different curriculum for our young ladies grounded in their cultural traditions and their culture that helps them to develop some of those social emotional skills there. One of the things that as we were talking about wellness and mental health and wellness, like we said, we really wanted to move past talk therapy. And so one of the things that we heard from students is like, what if we had yoga? What if we had art therapy? And so our team was really committed to making that happen. And we actually started a new partnership this year with East Bay Art Therapy, who comes onto our school sites and actually provides art therapy groups to our students who may not be inclined to that talk-based therapy, but a therapeutic modality that's a little bit different, but also based in evidence-based research. All right, that last tier is our tier 3 tier. And this is where we do a lot of the individualized work, whether that's short-term counseling. It's also where we respond to our young people who are sometimes in crisis, experiencing some of those externalized behaviors or internalized behaviors that are impacting their ability to actually function in the school environment, right? And so what that could look like is sometimes we have kids that are breaking down crying uncontrollably, they don't know why. And sometimes that could look like externalizing behaviors of kids who are for some reason triggered and turning over tables, right? And so our team is able to respond to that to help those students de-escalate and return to a state of equilibrium or stability, so that we then can figure out and assess kind of the ongoing needs for those students. We also do a lot to do home visits and provide connections to community-based resources. And so at that tier 3 level, we have a number of people that actually support that component of mental health and wellness on our sites. And so in the next slide, you'll see that one of our goals was to really make sure that those people on every school site were known to our students. And so part of the work that we did in reopening was actually have them all wearing these student support t-shirts out and connecting with students. And that includes the people that make up this tier 3 team to support mental health and wellness are not just our social workers. They're your parent and community involvement specialists, right? They're your student advisors. They're your APAs. Right? They're your principals, they're your campus monitors who all respond, whether that's a crisis situation, they all respond to that, right? Whether that's a family who's in need of a connection to resources outside of the community, they all support with that. And we all, whether we know it or not, provide some level of counseling to our students. just by having that dialogue and listening, right? And so it's really important to know that when we talk about mental health and wellness, yes, we have social workers and interns, but we also do the work to train, provide professional development to other folks on our campus so that they can also support the mental health and wellness of our students. And so where we are now in terms of our next steps is we had an opportunity to meet with the student governing board last week to kind of develop our plan for collaboration for how do we actually have students owning this work of mental health and wellness and getting these things out, right? Because it was their voice that informed the changes and practices that we have. And so they have been diligently, Angela, Paula, those guys have been working diligently to help us promote on social media. They're actually organizing a campaign on social media around mental health and wellness. They are working in partnership with their ASBs to create videos to roll out in classes around mental health and wellness. We've also ordered banners. One of the things that we really want to disrupt is recognition that athletes in mental health and wellness, I don't know about y'all, but I was a college athlete and mental health and wellness was something that we didn't talk about, but there's so much pressure that comes with that we've actually found a way to get that information out into our athletic spaces where there's also a large group of people and students that are there. And then next week, we're actually going to be filming our very first mental health and wellness video for the community. That will be a collaboration of social workers on school sites and students on school sites talking about mental health and wellness together and what it means to move past survival into thriving. And so we're really excited to finish that video. Superintendent Vanderzee has helped us secure folks so we can have a high quality video. And the last thing is we've developed these brochures that really outline everything that I've shared with you tonight in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese to share with our community at large so that they can be a part of this work with us. And so with that, we want to make sure that you guys are also part of this work with us. And so we've got something for you. Thank you.
This is, I might like some. Thank you.
Oh, I got chopstick.
So you have two requests, Ms. Powell.
I know, I'm like, if you need sunglasses, let me know. We have that. We have the stress ball squishies. And that was a part of what we were able to give to our students to welcome them back, to create the noise around mental health and wellness, to normalize it. And it actually worked, y'all. Like it worked. The kids were very engaged. So we hope that y'all wear y'all bags. We need that marketing and publicity to really make that noise. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I have a question. I mean, this is amazing. And I'm sure you're all already thinking about this, but I mean, this is a need beyond the pandemic, but this is clear, like the pandemic has clearly exacerbated the need for our communities and our children. There are some that, I mean, I think you alluded to it being taboo. I know as a Latina with my family, I'll speak for my family. It has been really hard to talk about this, to support certain members, for them to feel safe, for them to feel like it's okay to get help and us to talk about it. And I just wonder how many of our students don't have that. And, you know, they might be crossing that table and feel like, oh, I need that, or not even realize. And so how are y'all thinking about, I know we have to start at a place, but like, is there some sort of like referral system or?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually, last year in preparation for this year, we actually were able to work with IT to actually purchase a case management system that is aligned with social work practices, right? Many districts have, Infinite Campus or student information system. But as a part of that new software that we were able to get, we actually have a universal referral form that you can actually find on our website. Anybody can submit it. A teacher, a community member, a family member can submit that referral form, and it goes directly to the social worker, mental health and wellness social worker at that student's school site for follow-up. So that's one way. We also have our Say Something app as well, which is our anonymous reporting app. That we get a lot of tips from students about the mental health and wellness of their peers or friends that they may not want to know that they're sharing that information about their friend, but it's a powerful tool. And we've been able to connect with some of our students who are really in crisis and nobody knows through that app as well. And then in addition to that, we all have walk-in services in those wellness centers as well. So we have a couple of different modalities that folks can use. Yeah. And then we encourage you to check out our new website, ESUHSD.org/wellness. You'll find more information, the referral form, and we also have a virtual calming space. So if you're at home and stressed and would like to find something to do, if you check out that website, we've got tools for you too.
That's awesome. I have to say that kudos to you and your staff have been worked very hard, during reopening and before that to support our students for mental health and wellness. I like to see a report. So how many students have been involved in a social emotional, from beginning of the school year and maybe 6 months from now? The percentage of the student has been dropped, because our social worker has been worked very hard and staff and also teachers really care for them. And I think that's probably we're looking to, how many and from ethnic group like Vietnamese or Hispanic, because during the COVID-19, I know that from, Hispanic, Latino families as well as Vietnamese family, they are very, kind of locked down and children and parents couldn't even communicate with each other, and they were so much social emotional and they kept inside. And that's something I'm really care to see, how many percentage that, students have been involved and how much, that we've been supporting them so they can get out that, social emotional condition. And I was wondering that among the 28 social workers that you have, in 17 new social worker, how many are bilingual as Vietnamese, or how many are Hispanic? Because I think it's very important that the social worker understand the culture. Is that, well, it's still good that, we have support every other student, but they trust more. So I like to see it. I don't know how many that you have on your board and your staff, but I really like to see someone that really understood, professionally, but also understand the culture and the language, so that make it easier for the student to communicate. And I think this is important.
Yeah, it really is. And that was really one of the things that we were looking for in the hiring process. And so because of that, we actually reached out to, in addition to, we posted it on EdJoin, we actually reached out to all of the local universities who have school social work programs to try to expand that pool as much as possible of applicants. Looking at the applicant pool, we were able to diversify. The one language that we did not have any candidates who spoke that language was Vietnamese. And so I think there's also a larger systemic issue around, different cultures in mental health and wellness. And so how do we access, especially in our Asian and Vietnamese communities, folks who provide those types of services and can do so, you know, in the school setting so that we can expand and have even that language capacity. We do have members of the team that are Vietnamese, but not necessarily who speak Vietnamese. We also have queer folks on our team. We were intentional in looking for that. We finally have our first African-American social worker on the team. And we were able to find, I think one of the other groups that we did not have represented was male social workers in general, not even across ethnic or racial or other cultural, but prior to this hiring process, we had one male social worker who served the therapeutic program. We now have 5 male social workers, which is gonna make a huge difference in being able to connect with our male population. And of those males, we were able to find a few males who speak Spanish. And we have a few women who speak Spanish as well across the school sites as well. And so really looking at those applicant pools and really trying to be intentional about access was important to us in this process. I do acknowledge that we still have growth to do specifically around Vietnamese and that language. And so if y'all direct me and help me to find social workers who speak Vietnamese, I am all in, because I think that's still a growth area for us.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, I'm networking, you know, with the Vietnamese media. I'm sure that we will find somebody. I think it's in this Santa Clara County. I heard a lot of social workers been worked with a county, but, you know, caught me by surprise that maybe they probably did not really look into adjoint. So I'll be able to offer just if anything that you guys can send it to me. And if I have my own radio station, I could, you know, mention on my radio station or invite the human resource, you know, associate superintendent, you know, to mention, you know, to talk about this position that we need, because I believe that is really be helpful, you know, for that ethnic group to look up into that social worker as the same culture and speak the same language. And I'm willing to do anything I could do to help.
We definitely would appreciate that support. I will say that we did get a chance to talk to a lot of different students, including students who are Vietnamese, and got their feedback about different things we could add into our centers. And so when we were meeting the other day, some of our young people, especially in our Vietnamese students, they brought up the idea of having tea in our calming spaces as something that they felt was like connected to them. And so our team is actually like moving forward with that recommendation to ensure that, like, if you tell me you need tea to be well, then I'm gonna get you some tea to be well. That's water in a bag. So we appreciate the support, any feedback and connections, because you're right. We do want to make sure that we have that representation, and language, especially when we talk about mental health and wellness, is so important to be able to have people feel comfortable having vulnerable conversations. So I agree with you 100%. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I hope the district would consider sending to the Vietnamese language media, because I do know there are many Vietnamese speaking social worker. In fact, my predecessor, Lan Nguyen, was a social worker, if I remember correctly. But I would encourage the district to consider reaching out to the overall Vietnamese language media. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board member has any question? If not, then thank you, Dr. Chan Power. So we move to 12.02, presentation and discussion regarding Assembly Bill 104 updated. Teresa Marcus, Associate Superintendent.
Yeah, I'll be presenting on that. But once again, I would like to thank Dr. Powell for all the efforts of the team and what they've put together. And just want to recognize that was, they were focus of a study by the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, and which analyzed a lot of districts. And that group had nothing but really positive things to say about what's going on here on the east side, what we're going in the approach. The other thing, that focus on wellness and the moving away from, like, I go there and kind of what you were talking about, families feeling like don't go there. It points to a problem, and a problem about us and judgment, and this move to wellness, and this move that there's things you can do for you to recenter, baseline, whatever, get back to the focus. When Dr. Powell and social worker Emily was here with us on Monday with the Student Governing Board, the students are very keen on that, which is why they're really looking to, once we put this out, to really publicize and get it out and normalize it across students. Like, this is okay. Talking about wellness is okay. There's great, when you get that brochure, you're going to see all the data that just talks about how common it is, and that there's a lot of things that we can do as individuals and as groups and as empowerment teams to get together and just help each other make today better. And so I think this inclusion of student voice, not just getting here and shaping the program, but pushing it out, is going to do a lot to just say, it's okay. Let's talk about these things.
Can I just say, I really want to double tap on that point of not just getting student feedback, but having them shape what it looks like so that they can also determine like their feedback in the process. Like, that's key, because it's easy for us to say, okay, we've set the structure, set this program, now tell us what you think. So thank you for leading the way in that manner, Miss Dr. Powell.
Good job. Go ahead and move on to 12.02. Mr. Van der Zee, please take it over.
Thank you so much. I will be talking tonight on behalf of Ed Services around Assembly Bill 104. And so let's just first talk about what Assembly Bill 104 was. Like, this was passed. There's 4 main components. One, that students could earn a diploma for the minimum state credit and course requirements of 130 for the class of 2021. That was last year's seniors. Second aspect, that students could also elect to graduate with the minimum number of credits for 2022. That's this year's seniors. It also gave the rights of students and parents to request a pass or no pass for a grade earned during the 2021 school year. This isn't something that we think a lot about as a high school district. We don't say you don't have 60 credits, so you're still a you're still a 9th grader, as opposed to you're now a 10th grader, right? We don't do that. Typically, that's not very common, but in this Assembly Bill, parents and students have the right for a consultation about whether their student should remain in the same grade level. And so what we're presenting tonight is really some of the early data of how this has come about in our district. As always, we're looking to build equitable communities. And so as Dr. Powell just mentioned and moved through about welcoming students and responding to their needs, this is a key aspect of what we do, just in terms of how we issue grades, how we graduate, how we move students through the system. And as Ed Services has really brought to attention, when, as Dr. Powell said, they brought about last year, was just always looking at an issue around practice and policy and access. I would encourage us tonight as a group to really look at these numbers. They are what they are at this point, but really looking at the power of how policy really does impact access, and how practice can actually call for a policy. And for us to, as we think forward and in the future in wanting to look at policy or allowing for greater access and the role of policy making in that, I think this is a clear example. We knew that we dealt with some issues around a policy locally here last year. And then we also know that the state came in then with AB 104 with a bill to really address an issue of policy. And then as we look through this, we might have questions about how accessible was that? What practices led to that? When does a policy really need to be introduced? And I present tonight, these numbers are these numbers, but really to get us thinking as a community, as a group, of the role of policy in building up access and improving practice. So let's talk about the timeline for AB 104. AB 104 was enacted on July 1st. The grade change request dates were all dictated here by AB 104. We had our summer graduation on July 28th. Universities had to notify the California Department of Education as to whether or not they were going to accept pass or no pass by July 16, right? And then July 21st, they then, with that information, posted which universities would comply with that law. Here is where East Side notified parents. Once they did that, we were able to send out the notification as it was according to July 31st. And the policy only allowed for a 15-day window for people to take that. Right? And I'm just going to just note that with all the efforts to communicate, and that was text and schools calling and everything, when you're dealing with a pandemic and questions around return and recent regulation on in-person instruction and independent studies, to have a 15-day window to even in the middle of July or August to figure out what are they talking about a grade change, get to know that and inactivate it. It's one of those things I think we should consider as we think forward, just like what is our timing of our changes? It's a lesson by looking how a state went about it. And so August 15 was,
Superintendent,
yes.
it would help if you took your mask off. Sometimes I miss your words. Thank you.
I will do that, and I will try to modify my speed as well. So we're looking at these two. These were like these early deadlines of July 28th. We have July 28th here just to identify the graduation. So as it related to earning a diploma, we require 220 credits. We know that of those 220 credits for our East Side graduation requirements, of those 220, 160 meet the A through G criteria. And those are the classes that a UC system says, hey, you need to have those credits with a grade of C or higher for us to consider you for enrollment. What the state requirements are, you can see that they're in particular areas, and it's 130 credits. So in moving the graduation requirements, you can see that they move the bar significantly to the 130. So essentially what we needed to do was the process for this was you identify eligibility status by looking at our team did a great job of identifying who qualifies for this for 2021. And then communicating, our sites did a great job of communicating, reaching out to families. So this wasn't a post it and let's wait for they come. They reached out individually to each student that qualified for this, communicated with students and in emails and identified next steps. They then worked through the notification letters in you see the 3 languages there. And then if a student qualified for and elected to accept the 104, the student received the information on the graduation ceremony. So that's what we did before that July 28th date for the graduation ceremony, was make sure that we got to everybody from 2021 who qualified and had the conversation, is this what you want to do? And then we had we completed the survey around the student process so we could track it. And this is the data this is the decisions that were made. And as it says there on the bottom left, I can't thank, and Ed Services can't thank the counselors and site administrators who amidst rebuilding schedules and reopening and dealing with independent studies, made sure that they aligned the resources to communicate with all these families. And you can see that some of our students did not respond. And in other cases, you can see like in the case of Foothill here, where 28 students, 28 students accepted. I would like to graduate with the new student rates. 62 said, no, I want to come back for a 5th year. I want to come back and meet those, get that 220, right? Because the power of that piece of paper with 220 is very different than what it represents with 130. And that was a lot of the conversation that we had. Our counselor staff did a great job. By no means trying to discourage anybody for whom the 130 was the best next step for them in their life, but under making sure that they were clear that you're making it a very powerful decision in this moment. And we want you to make sure that you're informed in making that. So you can see that you have, like, for instance, let's just look at Oak Grove. We had 8 students say, I'll take that, and 15 who said, no, I'll come back for a 5th year. And I think that speaks to the power of our counseling team. So essentially, this is still a work in process because we do have our current seniors who are still eligible to do the same thing. And so what we're making sure that we do is that we enroll them in the classes to continue to make progress towards graduation. And similarly, we'll be having conversations with them saying you could take these requirements, or because of where you are, feel free to come back for a 5th year, or we find a different schedule for you to do credit recovery and to get there. But essentially, if there's a value to this AB 104, and we talk about the tight timelines, I think there is the value in the fact that we're doing what we do well, which is find those students that need those immediate conversation and utilize our resources to get them to make sure that they make informed choices. All right, this is the one, this aspect as we think of policy and how it was kind of rolled out by the state. Once again, by July 16th, the universities had to notify the CDE if they were going to comply with the law and accept pass or no pass. By the 21st, the CDE pushed that out because that had to be part of our letter. We couldn't just say, hey, you can request a pass or no pass. We had to say, if you request this, note that these are the universities that will accept them and others won't. So make that part of your decision making. We had to notify within 15 days. We notified it on notified our parents and our students on July 31st, and August 15th was the deadline for submission. Yeah.
A question on the universities. That's public and private universities that were sort of polled about this?
I would have to get you the list, and I don't know if
I just went
the
to
role.
30,000. I mean, did it seem like most universities were going along with this, or most were not, or?
I would want to look at the data more
Okay.
specifically before I answer that
Okay,
question,
that's
because
fine.
truly I didn't look through it through that lens.
That's fine.
Sure.
One thing that I just want to note that I think is really important, going back to the 130 credit graduation requirements, is it's really important to note that yes, there is that opportunity. However, students who graduate within the 130 credit requirement do not have that opportunity to go straight into a 4-year university. So as much as possible, we want to really support students in graduating A to G so that they have access directly into 4-year universities for higher education. And so I think that's just important to keep in mind as we think about these policies is, yes, like let's graduate, but also our commitment is college and career readiness. And so we want to make sure that our young people, as much as possible, have access to those opportunities when they leave us here in Eastside.
Absolutely. And again, our counselors are having those communications, and whether it's A through G or just how they stand and poised, ready to go for the next step in communicating what options are available to them.
That's why I could see maybe the higher number on the 5th year making more sense of students taking that 5th year.
Absolutely.
So
I mean,
just graduating immediately with the 130. Right.
yeah, I think that's the thinking that they're going through students' mind, and whether it's A through G or just with the 220 as opposed to the 130. All right, so we did have, there's also with part of AB 104. So once again, we've done that work with the juniors or last year's seniors. We'll be doing that, conducting that work in similar fashion in counselors meeting in a kind of that where we seek them out and assist them in the decision-making for making a plan for this year and next year in terms of their graduation. We then get to the aspect of AB 104 with the rights of parents and students to request that pass or no pass. And so we sent out the letter and communicated with through various forms with the 15-day deadline. The list of post-secondary institutions that would accept that went out. They could make their request known, whether that was the site, the PCIS, their counselor, they'd email it in, or someone else would scan it and email it on their behalf. And the grade changes essentially will be done by district level staff from those requested changes. We are still entering that, and we're still breaking down the data in terms of, you know, the total number of Fs and from what areas and passes. But this is what we saw. We know that between July 31st, when we first issued, and August 11th, 661 unduplicated students. So that could be one of those students could have 1 F, they could have 5. But right now we're sharing just the number of students that requested that change. 661 unduplicated students with the grade change request from July 31st to August 11. And then we still have those are processed, and then we still have grade changes that are pending. They made it still within the 15-day timeline. And then we still have time to enter them. And that was just, as you can see, in that 3-day window, 776 unduplicated requests, students with grade change requests that we have yet to process.
Wow, how does that happen? You got more kids in 3 days than in over a week.
Well, it's as they come in too, right? So
Oh,
it
yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
tends to
Back
kind
to
of grow
school.
as we go, and word of mouth and all things like that. And so when we talk about policy implications going forward and how we time things and
Yeah,
how we
yeah.
communicate things, that we keep these thoughts in mind as we go forward.
What's the difference? How many students do we know are not counted in this total from the 600 plus 700 plus that had Fs that did not make this, weren't able to take advantage of the policy?
What we'll be able to figure out after we have all the data, essentially, is how many Fs were out there, and then how many were converted to a no pass, and we'll be able to see by there we'll be able to see the difference once we have all that data in.
Okay.
Mhm.
Then I was wondering, because August 15 is the Sunday. So how does it impact? Because I know that in the business area, when you have the bill to pay on Sunday, they will allow you to do on Monday. You can pay the bill, but I was not sure that, for August 15 is Sunday, is how does that impact, the parents or student?
Yeah, so they had through the 15th, and I'll have to check in to see how many we received on 16th and what if we're able to enter those as well. I'll follow up with that.
Thank you.
Last aspect of AB 104 is that of retention. So this is someone that perhaps said, I have a parent who's a third grader. I don't think my student learned really had an experience with distance learning that has them prepared for 4th grade. I'd like to talk about retaining that student, keeping them in the 3rd grade. That's a very, like I said earlier, very unusual conversation at the high school level. That's not something that we get requested very often. There was a process for that. You can see it here that there's a request that makes within 30 calendar days. There's a consultation that has to occur within 30 days of the request. You can see that it involves the parent, student, administrators. You can see kind of the policy bias here where it says teacher. Sounds very elementary as opposed to teachers, or right in our situation. And then that conversation, it looks at the academic and what's best in the academic and social best interest of the student. If there's an IEP, how that's applicable, what other recovery options or way we can catch up. So all of a very full, rich conversation. And then the district, the notification of retention decision must be conveyed within 10 days. And as of August 16th, we've only had 3 requests for that across 22,000 some students. As you know, just in terms of high school, we tend to think of accumulating credits, not so much passing a grade. All right, so communication and next steps. I can't thank the team enough for thinking it all out and thinking out those implications of just what it means with the different forms of diploma, how to have those conversations, how this is a decision for now, but you want to be making this decision thinking about UC and college attendance and what's going to set you up next. So for all the site and district staff that did the thinking about this and the organizing and reaching that many students in such a short amount of time and continuing to outreach, fantastic job. And what we'll continue to do is for this year is we'll continue to reach out to current students around their graduation status and their next steps and plans for that. We'll continue to do the data entry and analysis around the change requests, and we'll hold those 3 or more retention consultations as required by the Assembly Bill. But what we witnessed here in Eastside was a very strong response in implementing this from a policy perspective in terms of the timing from the state. When it was initiated, when it came to us, as when it was introduced to families, and then the ability to respond. They're under the gun too. I get that, but I would want us to, as we think forward in terms of the power of policy in allowing for access, that when we change our policies, that we think really in those terms. How will this allow and expand access for the students we know we want to expand it to? And what are the practices that we really need to define that will have that? So I just think we have our numbers, we have our data for the students that are able to move on in life because they feel that's their best next step by taking the 130, great for them. For our students that are choosing to stay and work till there's 220, fantastic. For our students that if they felt that moving to a pass or no pass was in their best interest or in retention, those numbers are there. I think for us as an organization, this is a good opportunity to look at an instance and think of when we start thinking policy as Ed Services very depthly put in front of us, what are the implications for access and practice as we shape our policy? I think this is just a good just an opportunity for us to reflect on that and to guide our thinking later. So thank you.
I have a lot of gratitude for the district for instructional service. Instructional services was behind all of this, yes? Is that right?
This is Ed Services that really did
Services, sorry.
fantastic thinking, and I'd like to thank IT also for pulling the data as well.
And IT, yeah, just this whole situation, tons of learning. I'm oversimplifying, but let's just put it that way. Tons of learning, but I think just, the context. We're in a pandemic, trying to figure out how to best support our students and our just whole East Side community, right? Our teachers, our parents, everybody, to make sure that everything is set in place so that everybody thrives and feels as safe as possible. And you have a 2-week window with this that is super complicated, so many different layers. And we really rocked it out of the park, knocked it out of the water, however we want to put it. I know that oftentimes we've talked about, yes, graduation. It's important that we graduate our kids. And I've said this over and over again. For me, graduation is baseline. I think it's our responsibility to make sure that our students have the opportunity to say, I want to go to college or I want to go straight to a career, but they have the tools and the resources and are set up to be able to do that. And this is one of the times in the recent moments that I've seen our district systematize something, right? That really sets our students up with that opportunity. A clear example, right? Do you want to have that 5th year? You can graduate now, but these are the perks. And hearing these stories is just like music to my ears. And I know there's different things that we do in our district to support this, but I love hearing about these things. This is just so powerful. And so immense amount of gratitude for everybody that played a role in this, because this is no easy feat. So thank you.
All right, no other board member has any question. Thank you, Superintendent Glenn Vanderzee, to have that report for Assembly Bill 104 update. So move on to 13.01, discussion and action to approve First Amendment to sublease with Educare of California, Silicon Valley, 1399 Santee Drive, San Jose, California. Mr. Chris Chu, Associate Superintendent of Business Services, and Andrew Bell, Director of General Purchasing.
Yes, again, good evening. Tonight, staff is asking the board to approve this First Amendment to an existing lease agreement. Some of our board members may recall many years back, the district had entered into a leasing agreement both for a land lease agreement with Franklin McKinley School District and Educare of Silicon Valley to provide a facility for childcare programs. The administration has been able to negotiate this amendment, whereas it relieves the district of its obligations, its financial obligations to continue to pay any of the operating expenses for the facilities in lieu of giving Educare the ability now to sublease directly with whomever they wish to sublease for the program. So this amendment tonight here, I think, addresses some of the previous concerns from the district as far as the ongoing costs to be involved with this facility. But I think at the same time, it allows the facility and specifically Educare to continue to operate. So tonight, the administration is recommending this First Amendment to the original agreement.
Move for approval.
All right, I do have a speaker, Julio Pardo, for item 13.01, President of CSEA. So Would you give 5 minutes?
I take 2 minutes. Julio Pardo, CSA President. I just have a couple questions on this. I need to be corrected if I'm wrong, but I thought the district had helped pay for the construction of this facility. And if so, I'm just wondering, since the district helped pay for the construction facility, are we totally leaving this facility, just totally giving it to Educare, whoever it is? And if so, okay, I'm sorry. Again, if the district is totally leaving this facility, is the district getting any type of pay back for whatever, however much money they did put into this facility? And that is my question.
So staff, we have an answer for Mr. Julio Pardo.
I will try. So the changes with the agreement in this case allows Educare to sublease under normal circumstances. That would be up to the school district to then determine who to sublease. We still technically own the facility, so it's still considered an asset of the district. We're just at this time stipulating that we have no use for it. So the fact that the district previously provided funds to build the facilities, we still own the facilities.
Well, we have part ownership of it. Or
Yes.
Or
Co-ownership of the building.
proportional ownership. Whatever.
We did not fully finance that building. We contributed around $1 million or so. There was other federal tax dollars that were used for the construction. So while we did put in money for its construction, relatively in line with the square footage we've been using, currently that allowed us to enter into a lease agreement. We pay $1 a year to lease our portion of the facility. I believe we're in a 22-year agreement for that. And so this sublease really is, since we're not occupying the building, this sublease allows them to find someone else to utilize those spaces to relieve us of the operating costs.
How much of it do we own?
I don't have that figure. I can come back with that.
Madam President, may I comment?
Yes, go ahead, Rogelio.
Thank you. So the lease is really sort of in the nature of a ground lease, in the sense that the facility was built. So there is a lease of the land underneath it, and then the district helped to build a building on top of it. So it is not a title ownership situation. It really is a long-term lease arrangement between the parties. And it's, as the superintendent said, it is a 22-year lease total.
Thank you, Council, for clarification. Any other question? If not, I note this item moved by Board Member Herrera, second by Board Member Doe. All in favor, please say aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Any abstention? None. I've seen that an item passed unanimously. Thank you. So move on.
In the future, if there's public speakers, we'd love to have the opportunity to know that before we second the motions or we propose. I don't want any speaker to think that we already make up our mind before they have a chance to express an opinion on it.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Doe. All right, number 13.02, discussion and action to approve the contract for professional services over 25,000.
Move for approval.
Second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstention? Item passed unanimously. Move to 14.01, discussion and action to approve memorandum of understanding between California School Employees Association and East Foothills Chapter 187 and the Eastside Union High School District regarding school reopening for 2021-2022 school year, return impacts and effect. Tom Wynn, Acting Associate Superintendent, Human Resources. I do have one speaker, 14.01, from Julio Pardo. So Julio, want to speak first before we discuss?
Once again, Julio Pardo, CSE President. I think I spoke in one of the last 3 meetings. I spoke in the previous 3 years. Basically, I hope you all approve this MOU. One thing is that I gotta thank Tom Nguyen. I mean, we actually worked this out pretty quick. We can get right down to it. Although we did start with Mr. Vanderzee, he was pretty busy at the time doing other things. And when Tom took over, we were able to get it over with. We were hoping to get it done before you guys had your Wednesday or your last meeting, but unfortunately, because of our bylaws, we could not do that. So I'm hoping you guys all approve this. Once again, I just really want to thank Tom and the HR department. We actually did think ahead. The fact that the changes were made by the county in the past week was something that we thought about ahead of time. And so that's what I was talking about. We need to think ahead before and look at things that maybe we can propose before having to worry about whether the county or the federal or the state comes forward with these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Julio Pardo, for your comments.
Move to approve.
All right, this item moved by Board Member Cortese and second by Board Member Doe. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, no abstention. Item passed unanimously. 14.03, approve. Two, because I saw Tom when twice I looked into 14.02, discussion and action approved memorandum of understanding between Eastside Teachers Association and the Eastside Union High School District regarding school reopening for 2021-2022, return impacts and effects. Ms. Tom Nguyen, acting associate superintendent.
I'd like to offer a motion of approval.
I'll
What a
second.
question. I have, somebody has a comment? I didn't see any comment. No?
Okay, you don't have a speaker for that.
No, this
Okay, well, let's
21.02.
vote.
So let's vote.
Who moved?
I
Who
did.
moved?
I
Oh,
did,
Board
and I
Member
second.
Rara
Oh,
moved.
sorry, please.
Second?
Second, Board Member Cortese. All right,
Good.
all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, no abstention. Item passed unanimously. 14.03, approve new classified management job description and salary for a web tech specialist, adult education. Tom Nguyen, acting associate superintendent, human resource. You want to clarify anything?
Sure. Thank you, Madam President. Before you is a job description for approval. It is funded by the South Bay Consortium for Adult Education, so it does not impact our general fund or our budget in any way. They're providing this funding for us to hire this person to support with web tech technologies, updating the websites, social media, and just managing content for adult education.
All right, thank you. I need a
approve.
motion.
Second.
Patty, move by Patty, or second by Chavez. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, no abstention. Item passed unanimously. Move to 15.01, discussion and action to ratify and approve third amendment to funding agreement between City of San Jose and the Eastside Union High School District relating to installation of a community wireless network in the district. But other people probably might want to listen. So, and ratify and approve funding agreement between the City of San Jose and Eastside Union High School District relating to design, install, and maintain a community wireless network in the district for a term of 5 years to 2026 in attendance area of Independence, Andrew Hill, Oak Grove, Mount Pleasant, and Silver Creek High School.
Move for approval.
All right, moved by Board Member Chavez, second by Board Member Herrera. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, no abstention. Item passed unanimously. Move to 15.02, discussion and action to approve bond capital projects contract over 50,000.
Move for approval.
Second.
All right. Moved by Board Member Herrera, second by Board Member Doe. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, no abstention. Item passed unanimously. Consent action calendar.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All right. Consent action calendar moved by Board Member Chavez, Board Member Patty Cortese, second by Board Member Herrera. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. No opposed, no abstention. This item passed unanimously. So we move to 21, right? 21 is a written report, 21.01 item under section 21, a written report that I received into public record. No action is taken by the board. Board member on superintendent may pull an item for discussion or request, an item to be placed on agenda for discussion and action at a future meeting. We move to 21.02, receiving heating, ventilation, and air conditioning HVAC report. I do have Jack Hammer as a speaker for 21.02. Jack Hammer, please come up to the podium, please.
Good evening, once again, Jack Hamner, I'm president of Eastside Teachers Association. Something that I almost forgotten, put this in at the last minute, is Roger Silvera is I don't know his exact title, so I'll apologize to him, but he's definitely the coordinator of facilities here. And prior to the pandemic, Roger and I met frequently just to, keep up on the happenings. So, what goes on at the schools and the maintenance that's required and all the work. But I wanted everybody to know, with everything that was happening, there was a lot of staff members, admin, certificated, classified, that we're all a little bit concerned about the safety protocols and measures here at school. And Roger and Matt and his team and whoever else is involved that I don't know, so I apologize to them, but I think we all should thank them for what they did. The first week was definitely difficult. We had a ton of people getting complaining about certain things. Roger, we always met before, and so he didn't hesitate. So he and Matt and our grievance chair, Greg Boyd, we all met, and he was extremely helpful because he wasn't only just telling us what had been transpiring, although we knew a lot of that was happening. What he also did is he explained the processes, and most importantly is the thermostats within most of the classrooms and the rooms. And it was definitely helpful because people that didn't understand that were wondering, like, well, geez, when 30 people all of a sudden pack into a room, why for the first 10 minutes is it so hot in here? And that's because there's so much body heat and the CO2 levels go up, and then it activates the process of how these rooms get cooled off and the air and the fresh air gets circulated through. So all of that stuff that they did not only made it informative for all of us, but it allowed us to basically pass that information on to people so they understood the process and how everything works. And kudos to all of them for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack Hammer, for your comments. I agree with you. Thank you for all the staff that have been involved with, in this report for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning HVAC system. So, board member Kotisi?
Yeah, I do have a quick question. And I assume the answer, but I didn't exactly see this in the report. But I'm assuming that if there's nobody in a space, that the system turns itself off. Is that correct? Do we know?
I will attempt to answer. I don't think Roger's here. So as I understand your question, when a room is unoccupied, is the system on or is the system
We're not
off?
heating or cooling it, right?
System
It's
could be
just
on
off.
hold.
Yeah.
So the answer is most likely it is off because of the controls. The environmental control systems are programmed in such a way where we know when the room is generally occupied and when it's unoccupied. And so weekends, holidays, summer breaks, we know when the systems are, or we know when the rooms aren't occupied and the rooms can be programmed to be off. And then vice versa, when the room is occupied, the system should be running and functioning.
So it's more of a programmed or automated function, not a.
I would say of all the classrooms that have the programmable thermostats in those spaces, they are all centrally controlled. I do believe we have still some old classrooms with old thermostats that are all on manuals. So those are manual set timers like at home. And so that would also have to be programmed in such a way to know when the room is occupied and when it's not occupied.
Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, Board Member Doe, go ahead.
From the teacher perspective, if the teacher walk in a room with 20, 30 students, the room get very warm. How do they know when it's cool? I'm just thinking I'm trying to think from the perspective of teachers seeing that room. Said, is it going to take 20 minutes or 30 minutes
Imagine a room where, again, 30 bodies or 15 bodies, whether it's a cold day outside or a hot day outside, a lot of factors go into how long it takes for that interior space to reach that certain temperature. And then from the standpoint of our room settings, there's a certain range in terms of temperature. That room would not get any colder than or hotter than. So it depends on a lot of variables in terms of how long it will take for that room to get down to that particular set temperature.
First of all, I completely understand and I appreciate the perspective. I'm just trying to think from the teachers and the student perspective. They walk in, it's going to be instantly warm, right? Instantly, because you got 30 plus bodies, the 29, 30 students, and you have the teachers, and then they say, well, it's really warm all of a sudden, right? And if it take 30 minutes or 40 minutes before you get to the desired temperatures, they may become unhappy, and they're trying to play around with the thermostat to get to the temperatures that are desirable. And of course, that now you have a very a wide generations of temperatures are very volatile. How do we communicate so that they understand the way that you and I understand, so that there's no need to play around with the thermostat or email the board and say, hey, my room is not getting the desirable temperatures.
Sure. Actually, if you don't mind, there's a couple ways to mitigate that. One, imagine that, again, you, the teacher, come into that space, it's too warm or too hot. One option is that you have the ability to override the device to get it to turn on. But one of the things that I don't think people realize also too is that we try to condition these spaces in advance of when we know students come in. So imagine on a cold morning, the main building hasn't been heated for the entire weekend. Our building systems turn on at an early time in the morning to make sure that the rooms are heated before staff and students come in. So for the most part, those rooms are in the optimal temperature range. But again, it may come down to still that difference of a degree or two, might be too cold still or too warm, where then the teacher, unfortunately, may experience that uncomfortableness, but they have some ability to adjust that temperature. But again, it goes back to then how long it takes for that space to warm up or cool down, depending upon those environmental conditions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Christou. We move on to 22.01, opportunity of board trust to request item on future agendas. I don't know if any other board member has any item would like to request. If not, I have I asked for the report tonight relating to the student that will involve social emotional from beginning of the school year, maybe into the end of the year. We probably like to see the report percentage of, to break down to ethnic group, as well as how did we improve that support our student, after pandemic. And when a student come back to school, and how do we going to support them? So I'd like to see that report. On the study session, I like to put in the ethnic study. I like to see that study session will be have on the item that I would like to request. And all right, so we move to 23.
I'd like to.
Yes. Oh, you have okay, go ahead. Please.
Yeah.
Sorry, didn't see.
Glenn, I apologize if we've already discussed this. We very well could have. So my memory just, I know we have 2 board meetings now, usually per month. One is focused on most instructional outcomes, right? Or figuring out or discussing what we're doing in that realm. And then the other is everything else for the most part. Is that the main reason why we don't have like the LCAP or like the regular, like the stuff that I had in my request to discuss things that are happening in that area? Because I still want to see that happen. I know last year we started with an iteration of school, if each individual schools, what their focuses were. And I know this year is different, but are we still thinking about having those conversations?
Absolutely. And what we want to do is at our retreat is to kind of talk out the sequence of that and align it towards goals and how we're thinking so that it comes from a place. I think
Okay.
we'll be starting earlier, even if we start after that date and getting what we want to make sure that we're all aligned as a system, as a board, to do that well. And we will. But honestly, also, we did want to focus these 2 first meetings really on the issues of reopening and giving us the flexibility that if something was coming up that was unexpected and that we needed to address, that we would have space for that.
100%. And I even asked this with, I mean, not hesitancy, but just awareness that is number 1 priority. When you say retreat, it's the September retreat? Is that what it is? Yeah.
September
okay.
25th.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, now we were talking about Board of Trustees Superintendent Communication Comments. I will ask Board Vice President Manuel Herrera, do you have anything that you need to report from Metro Ed or?
I usually don't have a comment, but this time I wanted to mention that I saw an article in the New York Times, and earlier this evening I forwarded the link to the board and the administration. It basically is calling into question the efficacy of these types of plastic dividers as a COVID protected, measure, and even saying that some studies are underway, including by those who study the movement of air and particles and aerosol and what have you. And they're saying that it can even create more risk, in certain situations. I found the article interesting and I forwarded it to the board and the administration. So in case it has any relevance. And I also want to acknowledge ESTA President Jack Hamner. I must be tired. Just for his acknowledging the disparity in salaries for administrators that has developed over 5 years, where some administrators just simply haven't had any measure of equitable movement in the way the rest of the organization has. And I thought that was a pretty remarkable statement on the part of our ESTA president. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Board Vice President Manuel Herrera. About Board Member Lorena Chavez, Clerk, for any audit committee or Santa Clara County School Board Association.
And I just want to share my gratitude once again for every staff member, every community member, student, for doing their part, and ensuring that we have a strong start of the school year. There's a lot going on, yet we have so much to celebrate, and don't take that for granted. I feel very proud to say, I am representing a district that is doing a lot of amazing things. So just leaving the space with a lot of gratitude for everybody in our community. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Board Clerk Lorena Chavez. About Board Member Patty Cotizzi.
Thank you. I was very, very closely monitoring AB 104. So I'm just really pleased with the colossal effort of the district to reach out to students and families around that. So I just wanted to echo the earlier praise. And also wanted to give you an update on our student governing board. So we did meet last week. They have not done their freshman elections yet. So they are, which means that they have not filled all their slots in order to do their officer election. So next time we meet, we should have a student governing board chair, which will then join us as a student board representative. And I'm especially grateful for the work of student services and working so closely with student governing board to really have the practices that we're taking on informed by student voice. It's amazing thing to witness that exchange and that evolution and how someone comes up with an idea and then it actually shows up in a presentation and shows up, you know, in the practice. It's just awesome to watch that. So thanks.
Thank you, Board Member Kotisi. Now, Board Member Brian Doe, happy birthday to you. He said it 2 days ago. So I would just say happy birthday to you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just want to take this moment to echo two things that mentioned by my colleagues. One by Vice President Herrera to compliment Mr. Jack Hamner on the president of ESTA on his acknowledgements of the disparity in compensations at our districts. I also want to acknowledge the words of my colleagues, Patty Cortese, who spoke about AB 104 and about the effort that the district have taken, the colossal effort, as he phrased it, in reaching out to the students and the families to make sure that they be able to get the grade adjusted accordingly. So thank you for that. I also want to thank our staff. I know that there are a lot of challenges coming back to school in persons. And so I thank the patience of a lot of our staff and our district to making sure that we provide the internal customer service to our employees, that they know their values, they know that their health is important, and that we do everything we can to make sure that if there is a potential risk of COVID, that they are taken care of. So I thank our district for being very intentional on that front. Thank you.
All right, so now it's my turn. I want to say that I appreciate all, teachers, staff, administrator have worked very hard during, the reopening school. And I know it's very challenging time that all students will have to come back to school, and we work very hard. I really appreciate Dr. Power for the mental health and wellness report. That's very interesting, and how we're going to support and for our student. So for the mental health and wellness issue. And I also want to mention that next week I'm finished my course, which is Center for Asian American United for Self-Empowerment Leadership Program that State Senator Dave Cortese have recommended me to this program. So I've learned quite a bit for a leadership skill. And want to remind everyone that September 18 is the Moon Festival. The organizer has been working very hard, and we will follow CDC guideline. And we want to make sure everyone be safe, and healthy. So, and they're gonna send out the VIP ticket invitation out to the board, as well as the administration were interested. And I believe that at that day, the organizing committee will present the check for the homeless McKinney Event to homeless student, including that my birthday coming up next week. And I also want to have the birthday that I want to raise a little bit fund for the homeless student, because I know that it's going to be very difficult this year, that we gonna have to raise as much as we could to support our most vulnerable student. That is McKinney Vento, and I know staff have been working very hard every year. And can you believe it? This year is the 30th annual Moon Festival, which is I'm one of the founder. I'm a 20th year for my work, which is under my business, and a 10th year that we champion with former Superintendent Chris Fung for the McKinney Vento project. So that's a remarkable year for me. I hope that this is something that resonated to anyone, but I really appreciate all of the support. So that's all I have. And we're gonna move ahead to 23.03. Yes. Yes, Glenn Vanderzee, Superintendent comments.
I just want to thank everybody in Eastside for all the work they put in reopening this way and for dealing with anxiety and excitement and hope and fear and questions about what they were going to be walking into. And I thanked everybody who showed up that first day, walking towards something that we continue to do and build equitable communities and prepare themselves to do that and to look out for each other. There were a lot of interview requests and a lot from reporters, and we were on the news quite a bit that first day because we were one of the first districts to open. And I can tell you that a few channels didn't run our story because it wasn't the story they were looking for. When we said we've shown up, our kids are back, our teachers are back, they're happy and they're excited to be with each other. Our kids are masking up and they're masking up when we're outdoors, and we're building equitable communities. The end, right? Like, and that's really where we wanted to do, and we accomplished that. So for all the people in our system, thank you for that. For our students who felt a great deal of anxiety the night before because they've communicated that, thanks for taking that step of walking out the door and walking into a place where you are welcomed and we're going to work for success. And to our families for trusting us with that, thank you. And staff, once again, I can't thank you enough. And in full transparency, our positivity is not 0.003%, it's 0.28, which is just a little over 0.25%. So we're doing great, and let's keep going. All right. Thank you all very much.
That's awesome, Superintendent Van Der Zee. 23.04 for meeting evaluation. We get out here before 9. We do a very good job, right? Well,
I have a quick comment under evaluation. Sorry. We will wrap up. You know, we used to, under 10.0, we used to allow 3 minutes unless there were a whole lot of speakers. And now I notice that it's just down to 2 minutes. So is there a reason for that?
I don't know that was the reason. I know that before we have 3 minutes, but I think we maybe on a Zoom and we're looking for before the pattern that we have many more speakers. So we reduce it to 2 minutes, right? But I think
Yes, that is the discretion of the board president. And if we feel like that's not working, I think that the formal written comment that worked really last year, I think has been an addition. That's very positive. It's been a vehicle to allow for public input without them having to come to the meeting, which I think is really a way to extend the opportunity for input. If there is a feeling that that time should be extended because people aren't getting their point across, maybe we readdress it. So I think we can just be vigilant of that. I do want to note, however, that a comment was put in for 10.01 after that had ended, and I will make sure that that's included in the record and also in the Friday update.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Board Member Patty Cortese has recommend that. I forgot about that too. So let's move to 24.01 Legal Counsel will report on closed session action.
Thank you. Closed session item 2.04. The board, after motion by President Lay, second by Member Chavez, unanimously approved the appointment of Mr. Tom Nguyen as Associate Superintendent of Human Resources. Also under item 2.04, after motion by Member Cortese, second by Member Doe, the board unanimously approved the appointment of Namrata Mohan as Dean of Students at Evergreen Valley High School. There are no additional actions to report.
Thank you, General Counsel Rohirayo. Meeting adjourned. Thank you. We'll see you September 9th.